संकट का सामना करते हुए नए संकल्प के साथ मैं आज एक विशेष आर्थिक पैकेज की घोषणा कर रहा हूं। ये आर्थिक पैकेज आत्मनिर्भर भारत अभियान की अहम कड़ी के तौर पर काम करेगा। ये पैकेज भारत की जीडीपी का करीब 10% है। 20 लाख करोड़ रुपए का ये पैकेज 2020 में देश की विकास यात्रा को 20 लाख 2020 में आत्मनिर्भर भारत अभियान को एक नई गति देगा।
There are 6 major steps for the MSMEs. The first one, there is a collateral-free automatic loan for MSMEs which is being provided. This will give facility up to 3 lakh crores. There are no guarantee fees, no fresh collaterals required. So I guess this will benefit 45 lakh units so that they can resume their business activity and also safeguard jobs.
A very good evening and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Well, we have seen just the beginnings of what a 20 lakh crore rupee revival package to put India back on its feet and be Atmanirbhar will look like. Today was day one, first day, first show, you call it, or the first chapter unveiled by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. So what were the highlights? MSMEs big in focus, liquidity for micro, small and medium enterprises, a credit guarantee coming in so that banks open their purse strings was a major focus. Some relief for real estate with RERA deadlines, etc. being postponed for the salaried employee and the contractual worker. Also some more cash in the hand. You will have to now contribute 10% of your salary to your PF instead of 12%. TDS rates will also go down. That's tax deducted at source. Was a lot of money actually spent today? Possibly not. Was it a clear idea of what is coming? Possibly yes. Well, over the next 1 hour, we will decode this package, what may come next, and what needs to be done to truly make India Atmanirbhar. Let's begin with this conversation with top economist Rathin Roy. Rathin, welcome to the show. Great to have you on. And let me first begin by asking what you thought of the announcements, with the caveat that this is just part one, a lot more has to come.
The announcements, in as far as they are looked at standalone, are unexceptional in nature. Most of them are administrative, in the sense redefining MSMEs, changing TDS, changing the rules on provident funds. So basically, a lot of them involve changing rules. For the rest, they largely involve providing liquidity and capital on an interest chargeable basis to different sectors of the economy, such as MSMEs and small industries and NBFCs, etc. Right? The total, you use the word fiscal. The total fiscal commitment from the government on a cash basis, which is how we frame our budgets, is probably about 14,000 crores and possibly 16,050 crores, no more than that. 4,000 crores is the contribution to subordinate funds. 10,000 crores is the contribution to the, I'm not sure what, one of the ministers said fund of fund, the other said funds of funds. I prefer to call it fund of funds, the mother-daughter business. And that's 10,000 crores there, and there's about 2,500 crores charitable report for the Provident Fund subvention by government. So out of 20 lakh crores, that's a fairly small amount, and that's possibly because the big ticket announcements are going to come later on.
So what would be these big ticket announcements? And what is your take on the choice of the first tranche of announcements? Do you think that there is a reasoning behind looking at MSMEs first? The finance minister did talk about how this would help out 45 lakh businesses. and these are the backbone of the economy, etc. But what's your view on the priority that has been displayed today?
Well, the priority that has been displayed today is to, I think, do three things consistent with the capacity of the government. You must remember that this government is not high capacity in its economics. For which very simple reason, the normal course of events would have been to say, this is how we see the economic panning out in the next 6 to 9 months. This is what we see we need to spend on healthcare. This is what we need to do to protect the back row. These are the public finances we have, and therefore these are the 19 or 20 or 40 things that we do. The approach that the government of India, all governments of India follow are primarily administrative. So what you're seeing today is an administrative approach. And what you're seeing is a willingness to commit the government of India possibly to liabilities in the future. But those liabilities will only occur if the private sector responds to the message the government is sending to the MSMEs, which is you're not going to get much income support. We're not going to pay your working capital bills or your wage bills in this tranche. What we're going to do is make sure that you have access to money if you have a plan on how to use it and get yourself out of this mess.
That's the problem, isn't it? That no one is quite sure what their plan is. I don't know if this can be comparable to any other situation in what Indian governments generally do, because this is completely new territory. When we're talking about businesses, they don't really know how they can foresee even the next 6 months to a year. In that context, do you think that we could have done with a more aggressive approach?
I don't know whether we are going to have a more aggressive approach or not, you see. So let's put it another way. We have done all this for business, and let's suppose in later tranches we see measures to actually lift aggregate demand. And then when industrialists and businessmen put 2 and 2 together, they say, okay, the government has done 2 things. It has signaled that it wants to be sympathetic to MSMEs through providing them with credit and administrative. All that business about procurement for 200 crores and all that. Right. So administrative, the government is saying we will give you priority. That definition changes also. NBFCs likewise have been told, you want refinancing, we'll try and make sure you get it. And then you have aggregate demand measures, so demand in the economy lifts. And when that happens and MSMEs are encouraged to supply more, that would be one sort of narrative that could pan out. It's too soon to say.
Okay, let me also come to the other aspects. Everyone's talking about the size of the package, what's really in the package, how much will reach people, what is the government actually putting down in cash. But if I just were to depart from it, the other very important aspect of the promise or the path laid down in the Prime Minister's speech was the reform bit of it, that we are using this or looking at this as also an opportunity to make this, India's century, etc. Do you think that the scope exists today to push through those reforms that we've been talking about since decades?
So reforms can always be pushed through if we decide to push them through.
Okay. So what reforms do you think should be pushed through? We've talked about labor, land, laws, liquidity as, those 4 pillars as labor and land is something that we've been struggling with for ages.
Yeah. So we can push them through now. Land reforms in particular, I think would be very helpful. Less bad regulation would be very helpful. I don't really want to start with the kind of labor reforms that we have seen UP and Madhya Pradesh produce, because they hit health and safety. And really, if you're going to run a modern country by compromising on health and safety regulations, then that's the wrong place to start, with great respect. There are many, many institutional reforms we could do. How about administrative reforms? How about making sure that the same laws apply to government officials and to contract laborers? That would be a labor reform. How about making sure that all the land that is held with government is put into motion to create a slum-free India? That would be land reform. How about making sure that the middleman who takes away 60% of a farmer's income is eliminated and we have an efficient farm-to-market process? That would be a great reform. Do we know how to do these reforms? Of course. Are there vested interests that oppose it? Yes. So why don't we do it? That's an open question. But any government that says it will and can do it for whatever reason, with whatever cause, crisis or not, has my complete support.
Okay, I just want to talk a bit more about the labor reforms and the labor situation. Now, there are 2 parts of it. A large number of migrant workers going back home. some of those states saying that, hey, we're going to ease up on labor reforms and, help create employment here. You're going to have a situation where cities are possibly going to fall short of labor in the short term. We're already seeing that happening. How do you see the scenario panning out?
We don't play with market forces. If states feel that they can compromise on health and safety and environmental laws and get jobs that are secure or stable, I think they are just wrong. On the other hand, if states feel that relaxing commitments to hire and fire will help have more flexible labor markets, that's good. But ultimately, we must understand that 90% of our economy is unregulated. And if you're not getting people living in cities, I want to make this very clear, you're not getting people living in cities because they have to live in slums. And what the contract labor fiasco, the migrant labor fiasco has taught us is they are the last priority.
And the last question, Rathin, is about lockdown 4.0. Now we know that there is two things we know. There is going to be some version of a lockdown 4.0. It's going to look different in different places, and it's going to be easier than the last three versions. How crucial at this point is it to start living with coronavirus and getting things back to normal as much as possible?
Well, we must always get things to normal as much as possible. But we have to understand that we have to pay the price, like in the Bombay where you are, for having Dharavi. So you cannot get things back to normal in Bombay without creating a health crisis. And Bombay will just have to live with that. For the rest of India, of course, we can get things back to normal. We can have industrial movements. We can start, sort of interstate transportation. We can start trains. But we have to do that in ways which are very different from what we did earlier. It is possible to run a clean railway with social distancing. It is impossible to do that in a local Bombay train which we have lived with the last 50 years. So it's society, not government. If society is able to decide that the way we have lived in the past and the price of which poor people have had to pay and common working people have had to pay is unacceptable, if the city of Bombay even can decide that and commit to a slum-free India and good quality public transport now, then we can recover economically fast. Because they're not going to be able to go back without someone paying the price, and the price will be lower economic growth, and that will be paid by us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rathin Roy, for your take. And yes, Mumbai perhaps can, find a way to lead the way for everyone else.